What do you know about the 15th Amendment? Do you know that it gave suffrage to more than just black men? It gave voting rights to white men without property as well as poor white men. True story. Let's talk about it. The 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution, ratified on February 3, 1870, prohibits the federal government and states from denying the right to vote to citizens based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It was the last of the Reconstruction amendments and was proposed after the election of Ulysses S. Grant in 1868. But little talked about fact. When the country first came to be, voting was typically limited to white men with property, money, or both. Some states limited voting based on a person's religion. The 15th Amendment opened voting up to black men and all white men. They say that by the time we got to the 15th Amendment, property restrictions had been lifted, but that's not true. So maybe white men should stop bitching about black people getting rights when they keep benefiting every time black people get a right to make them equal to rights that white men have. But I digress. Let's talk about the 15th Amendment a little bit more. Now let's back up a little bit and talk about the 14th Amendment. We know that the 14th Amendment had been passed. It gave black people citizenship and equal rights, among other things. But it did not give black people the right to vote. Now, blacks had the right to vote in southern states through the Reconstruction amendments. The Reconstruction amendments required the southern states to rewrite their state constitutions to allow for universal male suffrage. All men, including black men, had to be allowed to vote. But this requirement did not apply anywhere else in the Union. So the North, some northern, some midwestern, some western states were still disenfranchising blacks. The debate as to whether or not to give the vote to blacks, who were now citizens, was heated in Congress. The debate as to make the 15th Amendment vague was heated in Congress. Northern states were generally as averse to granting voting rights to blacks as southern states. In the year of its ratification, only 8 northern states allowed blacks to vote. Anticipating an increase in Democratic membership in the following Congress, Republicans used the lame duck session of the 40th United States Congress to pass an amendment protecting black suffrage. Now, the original proposal was very broad, a wide-ranging ban on suffrage limitations, but a broader proposal banning voter restriction on the basis of race, color, nativity, property, education, or religious beliefs, all of which was rejected. The suggestion for a ban on literacy tests was rejected as well. And objections weren't just coming from the South. Representatives from the West were trying to ban the Chinese from voting. Some representatives from the North, where nativism was a major force, wished to preserve restrictions denying the franchise to foreign-born citizens. And both Southern and Northern Republicans also wanted to continue to deny the vote temporarily to Southerners disenfranchised for the support of the Confederacy. Like, all of them were like, no, we don't want them to vote. No, we don't want them to vote. No, we don't want them to vote. So y'all need to figure something out. And the original 15th Amendment was like, you can't ban the right to vote based on religious beliefs, based on education, based on property, based on race and color, based on nativity, based on the color of their shoes, based on the color of their hair. Like, they were trying to make it as broad as possible. And Congress was like, no. The various North and South factions of the Republican Party played let's make a deal and landed on the text we have now. Prohibits the federal government and states from denying the right to vote to citizens based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It says nothing about banning the poll tax or the literacy test, which will come to bite black people, Chinese people, and Mexican people in the ass. Certainly not white people. The removal of the verbiage regarding poll tax and literacy test was to get the biggest buy-in of white people, because again, they were not the ones who were going to be affected. They didn't mind if non-whites would be disenfranchised by these tools. Once they get the buy-in, it goes to the states to get ratified. President Grant said of the amendment that it completes the greatest civil change and constitutes the most important event that has occurred since the nation came to life. He was a sweet man, though. You know, simple man. He liked his wars, right? He should have never been president, but he liked his wars. Yeah. Anyways. Nevada was the first state to ratify the amendment on March 1st, 1869. Did you know that New York ratified the amendment and then withdrew their ratification? Yeah. Tennessee was the last state to ratify the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution on April 8th, 1997. 127 years after the amendment became part of the Constitution. 7 years after I graduated from high school. And, 7 years after I graduated from high school, 3 years after my 30-year-old daughter was born. The amendment was originally rejected by Tennessee on November 16, 1869. They ratified it again 7 years after I graduated from high school, 3 years after my 30-year-old daughter was born. But whatever. Now, former Confederate states were still rejoining the Union at the time, and the conditions for them had been updated. So originally, they had to rewrite their state constitutions to allow for suffrage of both black and white men, and they had to ratify the 14th Amendment. Now, they still had to rewrite their state constitution, but now they have to ratify both the 14th and the 15th Amendments to be able to rejoin the Union. And I'm sure that ticked off a whole lot of white men, because guess what? Of the 3 Reconstruction amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, they were mad about the 13th, but they hated the 15th because it allowed black people to participate in the political process, and they just couldn't have that. No. The 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870. Once the 15th Amendment was ratified, many Republicans felt that Reconstruction was done. They were finished. They felt that with the amendment's passage, black Americans no longer needed federal protection from the extreme violence that was going on in the South. The 15th Amendment, this piece of paper is going to protect you. Okay. Congressman and future President James A. Garfield stated that the amendment's passage confers upon the African race the care of its own destiny and places their fortunes in their hands. I bet he was a useless president.